Ian Harrison, the team manager, Red Bull K.
What's up, internet? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk to you guys about something pretty serious. Do you want to know how I know that my wife used my air compressor? Because when I'm done, I never wrap the hose that neatly around the compressor handle. I mean, look at it. It's almost perfect. I know I didn't do that. But what I wanted to talk specifically about was a particular obstacle that has been in Supercross for a long time, many years. It's called a dragon back. And essentially, it's a short whoop section, but it's on an inclination. So you're going uphill, hitting a short whoop section. And then, of course, you're going uphill. So once you get to the end of that short whoop section, there's a drop off, and that usually leads into some other kind of obstacle. Sometimes it's a step on, step off. Sometimes it's just another jump. The problem is, if you screw up that dragon back and you go over the handlebars, you're dropping back down to the ground from a higher elevation, and B, probably into the face of some big pile of dirt that was meant to be a jump. So let's take a quick look at Adam Cincerillo's crash. It's kind of hard to make out. This, I believe, was actually during practice. So if you were watching the night show, you didn't actually get to see this, except for the highlight that they show.
AMA Supercross will be the second Triple Crown event of the year in Arlington, Texas. Off to a bad start for Adam Cincerillo. Sure did.
So you can see his front wheel misses the last whoop on this dragon back. It drops as his rear wheel hits it. It really just kicks him over the handlebars, and he goes flying shoulder first into the face of the jump. In my opinion, he got really, really lucky. If he went head first into that jump, he might be looking at a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Now let's take a quick look at Cooper Webb. I think this was in his heat race. It's pretty much an identical crash.
Cooper Webb, very similar to what we saw happen to AC.
Front wheel misses the last whoop, which means the rear wheel hits the whoop, and the front wheel's in the air, which means it's just going to drop like a tank. And again, he goes over the handlebars, but in my opinion, not quite as lucky as Adam, because he gets launched into the air, lands on his tailbone, lower back area on concrete. Two-wheeled racing in any form, street or dirt, around the world, in my opinion, is some of the most dangerous forms of racing there are. These guys are putting their lives on the line every single night. In the last 13 years or so, there have been 3 somewhat high-profile racers who are now spending the rest of their life in a wheelchair. And I guarantee you there's been more than that. Those are just the 3 that got news and attention because they were popular enough. There's a lot of guys at a national level, local level, that are in the same boat, but you never hear about it because they're just not important enough, or they're not in the public eye enough, whatever the case may be, but you never hear about it. So it's a bad situation. Now let's listen to Ken Roczen talk about what he thinks is wrong and what he saw with the dragon back and why he believes it was dangerous.
They'll have like five whoops on the dragon back, and then the 5th one is the lowest one out of all of them, and you go hit all 4 of them, and then all of a sudden your front wheel goes over the last one. All you do is hit it with the back wheel.
I love how Eli Tomac, sitting to Ken Roczen's right, our left as the viewer, he's nodding his head vigorously in agreement with Ken Roczen.
And, it ate up Adam, and then I didn't see Cooper's crash, but it ate him up too. And I don't know, I've seen it happen multiple times, but I don't really know what the thought process is behind there, because you want the last one to be obviously the tallest one. That's the whole point of it. So, and then also they're breaking down because it is soft, so they're getting squirrely a little bit.
So when you hear the riders talk about the whoop sections breaking down, what they're referring to is the dirt on the East Coast tends to be softer, it holds more moisture, and it just breaks down over time after these top professional Supercross riders are just beaten over these obstacles over and over and over and over, and it takes constant repair. A lot of times you don't see it if you're watching these races on television because they don't show you in between the races. The bulldozers go out there and they reshape the whoops, they reshape the jumps because they just get torn up by the motorcycles. And that tends to happen a lot more on East Coast tracks because of the dirt being so much softer. On the West Coast, the dirt, it's more like concrete, and it holds its shape and it holds its form a lot better against the motorcycles riding over the tops of the dirt over and over and over and over. The problem here is that as you're exiting this dragon back, that last whoop section, A, it sounds like it's not being built big enough, and then B, especially on the East Coast, it's getting tore down by the wheels hitting it over and over and over. It's just, the dirt is just getting beat down and it breaks down. And then you end up with a smaller last hump, which just lends itself to the kinds of accidents we saw last weekend. Now, I mean, who's to blame? Do you blame the track builders for, potentially not building the last whoop big enough? Maybe the answer is we don't do dragon backs on the East Coast. Maybe dragon backs is an obstacle reserved for the West Coast where the dirt tends to be harder and it breaks down less. I don't know. Maybe you just get rid of dragon backs altogether. Just don't do them. So at the end of the day, when you lose championship contenders like this, and we've lost 3, right? So we lost 2 last weekend, and we lost a rider by the name of Marvin Muscan, who absolutely was a championship contender. He got hurt in a preseason crash, so you never even got to see him race this season. So 3 top dudes out just like that. It's partially good news for the remaining championship contenders because the field's a little bit thinner now, but it's bad news for the fans who are watching and want to see good close racing. At the end of the day, I think the guys that are building the track need to listen to the riders. You've got 3 guys on the podium, top 2 guys, Jason Anderson's in the mix. These guys are all telling you that, hey, you're making the last whoop on these dragon backs too small. It needs to be bigger. Jason Anderson brought up a good point. They're all actually really small in the grand scheme of things, and you tend to hit them faster. So all of these things, they need to be taken into account. And I don't know. I think the riders should kind of get together and dictate to the track builders what to do. They're the guys that have to ride the track. It only makes sense. So that's it for this video. We will cover in more detail last week's round in Arlington or Dallas, Texas. But for now, I just want to chime in on these dragon backs. It's just a dangerous obstacle. It sounds like from the rider's perspective, it's not being built correctly, or at least not being built safely. And maybe we shouldn't even use them on the East Coast where the dirt breaks down so much easier than it does on the West Coast. I don't know. This is my personal opinion. And well, it is what it is. Keep the rubber side down. Hopefully I will see you Friday. And if you like this video, give me a big thumbs up down below. If you haven't already, subscribe. And, if you're feeling frisky, share this video. Bye.
Look at that line. That's what I'm talking about. You got awesome lines. He knows how to flow.